I guess that my relationship to those moments have been strange in that I've always found them sort of romantic. You know, you don't get those moments without the pain, the truly transformative moments. So if you're paying the dues of suffering, then you're about to reach something that, you know, very few get to reach, which is an insight, if you're open to it, that you're paying for with the suffering. And that insight might be one of the most important things that you'll have in your life.
It's easy to talk about the successes, but what doesn't get talked about enough is the struggle. My name is Eric Weinmeier. I've gotten the chance to ascend Mount Everest, to climb the tallest mountain in every continent, to kayak the Grand Canyon, and I happen to be blind. It's been a struggle to live what I call a no barriers life, to define it, to push the parameters of what it means. And part of the equation is diving into the learning process and trying to illuminate the universal elements that exist along the way. In that unexplored terrain, between those dark places we find ourselves in and the summit, exists a map. That map, that way forward, is what we call no barriers.
I learned barriers are entirely in your mind. You choose to either accept these barriers, or you can have the guts to dance, to tango with the unknown, to take that first step and see what unfolds. I think that is what being an explorer is all about. That's a quote from today's guest, Dr. Albert Lin. Dr. Lin is an award-winning scientist, technologist, explorer, and storyteller, both on stage and the big screen. His work to reinvent how we explore has made headlines around the world, merging adventure with innovation. Our conversation today traverses his early days while living in his car planning an expedition to find Genghis Khan's tomb, to an accident that took his leg, leading down a rabbit hole of brain rewiring exploration to rid himself of that phantom limb pain. That's the science of neuroplasticity, which we do get into, including his experiment with 10,000 students at a commencement speech. Along the way, we learn a lesson or two as we go behind the scenes on some of his adventures through Mongolia, Guatemala, India, and even the inside of a wave barreling into the shore somewhere on the Pacific. This is the No Barriers Podcast. I'm the producer, Diedrich Jonk, and I do hope you enjoy this episode, hosted by Eric Weinmeier and Tom Lillig with guest Dr. Albert Lin. Off we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to No Barriers. My guest host, Tom Lillig. Man, awesome to hear your voice, Tom. Take a little time out of your busy schedule running Stoneward, an amazing marketing company, to join us. You're on the board of No Barriers as well, so great to have you. This is a good opportunity to catch up with you too.
Great to be here, Eric, and so excited about our guest today.
Yeah, Albert, man, so cool to meet you. I mean, and hang with you. We met in California, what was it, a couple months ago now?
Yeah, in some of the most intense conditions possible, which is to be in the center of a Hollywood debut.
Yeah, at the premiere of Welcome to Earth, man. That was cool. That was rad, man. I step into that world. See, Albert, I'm kind of like a dirtbag, right? Like I grovel in the mud, and then every now and I step into like a Four Seasons and hang out with you and Will Smith. But it's sort of a split personality sometimes to step into that world and go, whoa, this is pretty wild.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I don't, every once in a while I find myself, if you linked an expedition with an event where you're promoting something, it's like you're packing your hiking boots and your gaiters and your machete, and at the same time you're packing your tux. It's like,
yeah,
what world are we living in? But it's super fun. It makes you feel kind of like a little James Bondy, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was wild, and then we took a ton of photos and hung out with all these folks, and it was Hollywood's a scene. We'll save that for another episode. But so on Welcome to Earth, you did a really cool adventure with Will that we'll just start with, and that was in Namibia, right? And you guys, I remember you telling this story, and I think it's in the episode where you guys do this Tyrolean traverse across this canyon, and it's wild. That's so cool. I've done a bunch of Tyrolean traverses, but never quite in the way you guys did it.
Yeah, me neither. Using a drone to try to get a lead line around a big baobab tree and then Just pull
Which looks
pine.
like a Dr. Seuss kind of tree, right? If I remember.
Yeah, actually, it's the tree from what is that book way back in the day?
Was it The Little Prince, or I can't remember. It was
The
something.
Little Prince. Yeah, the
Yeah.
baobab. It's this wild, ancient,
Yeah.
huge tree.
And was it like over like a crocodile river? And so, yeah, set it up for everyone just to kind of set up your badassness.
Not badassness. It was. Well, I mean, I guess it is kind of crazy. You think about it. So you're in Africa. We're in Namibia, in the Namib Desert, and then all of a sudden we drive up to this area where there's this river that's got basically the largest crocodile population in Africa, and it's a place where there's, I think, an attack every week, basically, a week on local farmers or people that show up because there's nobody really there. I mean,
we're not promoting tourism to the area right now.
It's beautiful though. If you're up for a little crocodile experience, it's beautiful. But then we're trying to get this sense of how the river flows and carves away the stone over time. And the only really like up close view of this one waterfall that carves away the stone in this beautiful pattern is at the center of this little inlet, this island at the heart of this river, in the midst of this roaring rapids all around it. And so to get there, you gotta think outside the box. And we saw that baobab tree, and we're like, well, let's fly a line around it and then try to pull this climbing rope across and get across. I've never done anything with a drone to try to fly a lead line around, but I did spend a lot of time climbing when I was in my younger days. So doing traverses and things like this has been not as intense as what you've done, Eric, but it's been a part of my life leading up to.
So just so people can visualize it, like you're flying a drone with a rope, and if you fly the drone around the baobab tree, and then the drone flies back to you, and that's the way you connect the rope across this crazy canyon. And you hope, because you are not on the other side, you hope that tree is incredibly strong enough to be able to tension that rope, and then, hang your body weight as you slide across the canyon with crocodiles below you. Sounds fun, man. I wish I was there.
The tree is huge. The tree is massive. So, you get a sense for that it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
It's actually, baobabs, I think, are some of the oldest flowering trees on planet Earth in terms of how old they can, grow and how big they can get. So it's solid. And, I've definitely been in other situations where you, in a pinch, have to bail on a climb and you rappel off of something far more sketchy, which you can do, right? But so it felt pretty good. But it was seeing Will's kind of, anticipation in the moment that almost made me scared because he was a little scared, but I think it was also all the buildup of all this information about how many crocodiles were.
I'd be scared. Any human being would be scared.
I don't know. I think you're pretty fearless, Eric. I don't think you'd be scared. I think you'd be making some subtle joke.
Oh, sure, of course. So that would be covering up my fear.
Well, it was awesome. The whole journey through Africa with Will was about time, and it was about how time, is sort of taking place all around us, and things are changing in scales of time that are beyond our perception, and that actually the way that all the things exist is either happening very, very quickly or very, very slowly, and we only get this little narrow window in between all of that that we perceive as how things are moving and changing. But actually, the dynamic world that we're in is happening at much different rates all around us. So the river was one scene, but we were also able to rappel into the midst of this huge underground cave and look at, these stalactites that had been submerged in this underground cavern that ended up being this massive underground lake because of the way in which the water table had changed over time. So it was just, it was literally a journey through time, but with the Fresh Prince.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Now, I saw one of the things I did to research was to check out a ton of links and stuff. And Man, you had a wild commencement talk in San Diego. Wait, I can't remember what college it was, but that was you playing the guitar, right? In the commencement? That
Yeah.
was so cool, dude. I was like, wow, is he playing the guitar? I had to run and ask a sighted friend whether you were playing that guitar. You're really talented.
I wouldn't say I was. Yeah, I got lucky. I don't know how that was a moment. Yeah, so a couple of
Everyone
years
go
ago,
check out Albert's commencement talk.
a couple of years ago, I was asked to give the commencement speech at UC San Diego, and I have a link to it on my Instagram on Explore Albert. But it was, I didn't know what I was going to say. I mean, what do you say that hasn't already been said? And then right before that, I was really thinking about it. It's like, what is it about the different moments and the different sort of ceremonies that we go through that change us? And I think that for me, this journey comes back to my own accident, right? So I went through a moment of transformation where I lost my leg in a car accident. And in the moments afterwards, in the months and years afterwards, I thought a lot about, how to sort of shift my mind, because I was holding on to certain both physical and mental traumas. And it was taking place in the form of the most visceral thing, which was phantom limb pain. So I was starting to feel this extreme, excruciating pain in part of my body that didn't exist anymore. So I got really into the science of neuroplasticity and how to sort of rewire your brain. And I started traveling to all these different parts of the world where there was examples of that in culture. So, for example, I went to Varanasi, India, where the whole city is built on the Ganges River, and it's built as a technology to sort of get people to grapple with the death of a loved one. So that's where the bodies are burnt, and supposedly if your body is burnt there within a week, then you skip your reincarnation, you go straight to nirvana. So people have built this entire ecosystem of ritual around the importance of basically transition, right? And really, if you've spent a lot of time around death, it's the ceremonies are more about what the survivors take away from it, right?
But Albert, let me interrupt because it's so fascinating. Just to pause for a moment here, because so you're, first of all, you have a PhD, you're a doctor. You've gone around the world studying cultures and looking at ancient cities and looking at rituals and ceremonies of like indigenous cultures and how the world changes and evolves and how we move through the world in terms of quote unquote progress. And then this thing happens to you, which is you're in a car accident, you lose your leg. I mean, so looking back, it's sort of crazy. It almost like felt to me like maybe it's like your own personal chance of feeling these things you've been studying most of your career.
Oh yeah, it couldn't have been more visceral than having to then employ all of your own, Okay, so there's a moment where I lost my leg, and the first day I started to feel the phantom limb pain, I'd sort of done some research in the month in the hospital about what to avoid, phantom limb and all this other stuff, right? So my friends all happened to be, the doctors that were attending to me, because we're all in the same university, and I've had a pretty multidisciplinary career. So some of my friends were doing research on things like the front edge of depression research, which has looked at things like ketamine as a single moment to induce a neuroplastic state that would allow you to sort of rewrite your narrative and reset, right? So when they operated on my leg, my friends who were my pain docs, basically, I told them that I wanted to try this approach. They put me into a ketamine coma, basically. Right. So I went into the most psychedelic journey ever to have my leg amputated.
I had a friend who got hurt in Iraq, and he said the same thing when he was just laying there in the hospital, completely like burned the crap out of him. He was on ketamine. He said he was seeing some wild visions.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, really, some of the most incredible things I've ever spiritually taken away in life have come from these altered states that were all kind of brought around these one moments. My journey started off in engineering. I got a PhD in engineering, and then I applied engineering to try to understand more about human culture. So there was a time when I was, starting off. I'd just gotten this degree in engineering, and I sold everything I had. I moved into my car, and I basically gave myself a year to raise money to try to be an explorer, and the first project was to try to find Genghis Khan's tomb in Mongolia. And it sounded ridiculous, but eventually I got somehow into Nat Geo's sphere and got my first little bit of funding and started leading these teams into the remote mountains of Mongolia. But along the way, I was, just to get access to some of these places, I was encountering cultures that were about ceremony and tradition and ritual. And some of these things, like to be able to access this one mountain, I had to meet with this shaman who beat this drum until he went into this trance state. And then right in front of me, his entire being sort of shifted in terms of his own mind. And he was able to go into this completely altered state just from beating this drum into this rhythm. When I lost my leg and I started experimenting with different ways of trying to get to that same trance state to try to rewire my brain, it was because of the research that was being led on psychedelics and neuroplasticity in the fields of depression. So right now at Johns Hopkins, there's these trials that have been sort of pioneering the way, where they've been looking at, what happens to the brain under, let's say, a hero dose of psilocybin. But what ends up happening is you have all of these increases of neuroplastic connections across regions of the brain that aren't really talking anymore, and you get this suppression of the default mode, which is defined as basically every time your synapse fires or one of them fires, it's easier for it to fire again. So over time, from your childhood to your adulthood, what started out as kind of a blank canvas gets more and more embedded as these sort of trodden paths, and that's your default mode. And in a way, that's why, like,
it's like your default consciousness, right? And you just you kind of almost get lazy and bored or something, or just stuck in that one thing, that one way of seeing the world through that lens.
One way of seeing the world. One way of seeing the world. So when they showed that all of a sudden you could sort of suppress that and then rewrite a bunch of those pathways in the case of depression, I was facing something where I'm like, okay, my brain isn't letting go of this pain. It's coming at me in a part of my body that I cannot treat with anything physical because there's nothing there. It's literally the air, right? It's like the air around me. What am I going to do? So like everything else in my career, which has been multidisciplinary, I looked around at what the science was, and I met this neuroscientist named V.S. Ramachandran. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but he's kind of like a leader in the field. He's like the Albert Einstein of neuroscience of our time. But he happened to be in San Diego, and he discovered this thing where you could put a mirror between two parts of your body, and you could see the reflection of your remaining limb, and you could trick your brain into letting go of the phantom pain by creating this story for your brain to grapple with, to hold on to, where you can let go of. Let's say you're missing your hand and your hand's gone, and the feeling is usually like a clenched fist. Or like some kind of like moment where you're just like holding on to the pain.
Right.
If you can see a reflection in a mirror of your other hand, and then sort of release the pain with this trick, this visual trick, then maybe your brain will hold on to the new story that says there's no pain there.
Is it a reflection of the missing hand or a reflection of the hand that you have, or in your case, the leg that you have?
Yeah, it's a reflection of the hand that you have to make it look like your missing hand has come back.
I see.
To yourself.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, as a kid, I used to stand like in a mirror like this and then stick one leg up and pretend like I was flying. I don't know if you've ever played. It's kind of like that. But every time he would remove the mirror, the pain would come rushing back. So what that told me was that, okay, I can see the story, but my brain won't hold on to it, right? So it's like my brain is the minute the story's gone is referring back to the default mode. So then I started looking at all the research that was around. It was like, okay, well, maybe I need to enter this state of neuroplasticity. So we started looking at things like Kundalini yoga or meditation or, breathing meditations or and I started getting really into the sort of science of cultural pathways to a state of neuroplasticity. And that's why I ended up in Varanasi, India, because
All right, now we're back to Varanasi, India. This is awesome.
Because you get to this place where you've built an entire set of rituals and architectures and customs and traditions and a feel that has been designed to help people let go of something, right? And it's a place where you're so overwhelmed by the sensation of being there that you literally are like, you're letting go of your own ego, and that's the moment where you can sort of write new narratives, right? It also happens from like for me from surfing, right? So when I'm dropping in on a big wave, you can't even react. There's so much that is about instinct that you almost lose yourself. It's like an out of body experience. I'm sure you felt that before in your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the gym the other day because I've been really fascinated, Albert, by this inner journey. I mean, you've done huge physical things. I've done some big physical things, but the last half of my life, I've been really more fascinated by this inner stuff you're talking about. I've been thinking a lot and reflecting a lot. And I was at the climbing gym the other day, and I was like, God, this is like the most beautiful, almost the most happy state I'm in when I'm just climbing up a wall, reaching for the next hold, feeling this, like, I don't know, kind of like a flow, a beauty, a simplicity, of being fully here. And I was like, God, it'd be great to be able to feel that all the time. So anyway, I'm just connecting to what you're talking about.
I really love, Albert, that you had this multidisciplinary career. You became this explorer, and then it seemed like the accident sort of ignited this exploration into oneself and exploration into how ultimately do I want to live this life, this new life, and finds this joy in this life. And you have this amazing quote that I heard on one of your videos. You said, and this is why, like, I want to make a No Barriers poster with you on it and put it up, and every member of our house, every member of our organization in their houses. You said, I learned barriers are entirely in your mind. You choose to either accept these barriers, or you can have the guts to dance, to tango with the unknown, to take that first step and see what unfolds. I think that's what being an explorer is all about. I'm wondering, were you able to get to that realization prior to the accident, or was it only after the accident and your journey into self that sort of brought you to that point?
I think I'm very lucky that I had a couple of parents that were very passion driven. And when I left the house, like for my family, everybody who turned 18, that we didn't get fancy clothes or fancy cars, but we got a plane ticket to anywhere in the world when we turned 18.
It's such a great idea.
And that was, like, okay, go. I mean, it must be, as a father now, it must be terrifying to send your kid off into, like, wherever, like, just go, And so from an early part of my life, it was always about the unknown. My father was an astrophysicist. My mother is a musician and actress. And so, they were always just thinking about the sort of, like, my father was always surrounded by people just literally thinking about the universe, right? So everything was always about the frontier. And then, I think when I really felt it first was when we started to do this Genghis Khan project. It was just my friends and I, and living on couches, literally with no associations to any major organization whatsoever, just sort of piecing the thing together bit by bit. And there was a moment when we had raised a little bit of funds, and I brought the whole team out to Mongolia, and we're supposed to go into the field. But before that, we're supposed to, like, as I'm flying into Mongolia, all my contacts are sort of saying that, like, everything's falling apart, basically, in Mongolia. Like, all the groundwork that I had done in the months leading up to build the collaborations that would allow us to go to this place were all basically saying that we were amateurs, that we didn't have enough funding and we didn't know what we were doing, and all this stuff. And it's sort of true. I don't want to say that out loud, but it was sort of true. And I remember getting there and being like, okay, what's going to happen now? We can either give up and go home, and that's it. I will never be an explorer. That's it. That was my one shot. Or figure out how to judo move all these barriers is what we basically came up with, and just keep our eye on the goal. And so we go into this meeting, and this guy, like the first meeting, the guy literally just throws his tea on the ground and says, "You have no business being here," and walks out. We reset in this little bar, my friends and I, they were all rock climbers, right? So, and we had all been in the mountains together. One of them I had climbed El Cap with. Like, we were all climbers. So it was all about, like, problem solving. And we decided that we were going to approach the next meeting where every time something was said that was going to stop us, like whether you can't do this because, we would just sort of judo move around it. We wouldn't even answer it directly. We'd just say, "Oh, but da-da-da-da," and then talk about something really, really positive. And then just keep on, like, shifting it to a positive story. And I can never forget that one moment where we're sitting in the bar, we make the decision to do that tactic. Then another couple of meetings go by, and a couple of days later, we're loading up the trucks and going into a place that's been forbidden to go to for 800 years, right? Like, we had literally just chosen to not confront this negative energy, but rather move around it, like just judo move around it. And that got us, into the unknown. And for me, that was probably the start of it. When I lost my leg, as years later, I was super lucky to be also surrounded with really incredible friends. And I think that, no person's story is done in isolation. Really, it's about the love and support of the friends around you. And again, these friends helped me see that, there was ways to judo move the challenges, right? The barriers, so to say, right? And I remember one friend, I'm sitting there and facing, doubt. What am I going to do? And one friend finds this prosthetic clinic that looked like, I don't know, like a CrossFit gym, right? It was like, man, that looks cool. It's not like what you think of in your head when you think of getting a prosthetic. It's like, it looked awesome. And so I went there and I started seeing all these people around me doing incredible things. I'm going to the Paralympics, or choosing to live the life they want. Another friend showed me this picture of this guy surfing this huge barrel wave, right? This guy's now my friend, and I'm actually now in the process of a quest with him and with the community of friends I have around me now, to try to do the same thing, to be inside that barrel wave. But, I feel like my experience has been that you can basically dream up anything and then it becomes real. And it became very real for me when I was able to let go of the pain, because the pain I was dreaming up. I mean, it wasn't in a part of my body that even was physically there anymore, but it was so real. And then if I could get my mind to let go and truly believe that the pain was gone and really hold on to that belief, then I was able to create that new reality. And so it was like bending the spoon, in the Matrix. Like, if you believe the spoon can bend, then it's going to bend. If you believe that there's a barrier there, the barrier is going to stop you. But if you believe that there isn't a barrier there, then you're going to get through it. And that goes all the way back to that, graduation speech that you brought up, right? So I'm sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to say. And I'm like, well, instead of just saying it, let me try to put everybody into this neuroplastic state. I'm just going to do what I'm saying, right? So if that is a moment where there's a tradition and a ceremony and a thing to get people to shift their minds, then I got to put my money where my mouth is. If those ceremonies are to get you to those neuroplastic states, the same way that I tried to get to my neuroplastic state to let go of the phantom limb pain, and now these kids are graduating and they're being told, okay, now you've literally transformed into this moment, and now you're supposed to go and, seize your own life, then I need to put everybody into that ego death place, right? So I just picked up my guitar and I didn't even plan what I was going to say, and I just tried to feel, this epic vibe of 10,000 people in front of me.
It was great. Yeah, I felt like the trance came over and the images of the kids smiling. You
explained it so well, because that's right, Tom. Yeah, I felt that too. It was like words, but it was more about the experience, about the ceremony of what you were launching people into.
Absolutely.
So now you're remapping the brain. You're trying to see that new future. dream that new future, you got to take us back to India, because you never finished. We keep interrupting you, and you never finished your journey on that path.
Well, that was wild. I've found that my leg has been an incredible asset. It's here. I'm holding it up right now. It's carbon fiber, and I'm so lucky and got like this titanium rod, and it's got this little thing. I'm so grateful to have this, and I know that there's privilege in this. I know that a lot of people don't have access to prosthetics, but when I walk around now, I always kind of walk around with shorts, even if it's frigid outside, because I feel like it's like a home field advantage, because it's so dismantling to anybody's preconceived notions of what you walk up and you're like, oh, and then you've got the home, you immediately have the home field advantage. But I was out in India, and I was at this place where it's right at the heart of everything, where it's called the Burning Ghat, but that's basically this. It all focuses down on this one small riverbank. You arrive into the city, and it's like just the noise and the sounds and the smells just start growing and growing and growing until I've never been in a place with as many people, cows, horses, moving parts, vehicles, all condensed in these narrower and narrower streets, all into this one heart. And that heart in the very center of this city is on this river. And right at that heart, there is just these eternal flames of burning bodies. And there's this one flame that's the flame of Shiva, and it's just burning. They say it's been burning for 700 years, the same flame, and it's just been going and going and going and going. And this is the flame that they light all the pyres with. Stacks of wood all around you. So I go to this place. I just want to know. And when you stand there, you can feel the heat of the flames, and you see the bodies burning, and it's not like it's a totally different thing than I think I was expecting. I've seen dead bodies in my life before, and I've held lots of skeletons on my journeys into tombs and things like this. But it felt very different because nobody's crying. It's just this low sort of hum of release, and punctuated by these drums all the time. These drums beating like clockwork.
Yeah.
And these ceremonies and drums and drums and drums and drums. So I'm sitting there watching this thing, and some guy comes up to, there's kids flying kites, there's cows taking a poop, everything's all around the same spot, right? Like it's not like the way you would think of a sort of solemn ceremony here. There's literally life happening all around at the same exact moment.
Right.
And the guy comes up, and he wants to, he's kind of messing with me a little bit, right? He's like, what are you doing here? He's just trying to poke at me a little bit, see what I'm doing there. And then all of a sudden he sees my leg, and he's like, okay. And he backs off. And then he and I, like a little bit later, I'm like, he comes back and he's talking to me about my life and everything. I'm like, look, I'm here to try to I want to know more about the ceremonies of release. And he's actually this, they call him Baba Lutlo, which Baba is like the guru, and Lutlo means the thief. He's like the leader of this gang, basically, on this one small town, right?
Yeah.
And his whole crew, they're all young guys. They're all kind of like, like this street crew, right? We become friends, and he starts taking me to all these different ceremonies where, like down in these temples underground, deep inside the heart of this city where nobody, really even knows there's something going on. There's, a guy beating a drum into this trance state, and he's, sort of worshiping this Shiva, which is like sort of the god of death and creation. So the rebirth thing, right? Over and over again. And he's taking me all through this place. And the whole time he's sort of telling me about the story of this city, which is a city built, they say it's the longest inhabited city in human history. I don't know exactly if that's true or not, but they say that. And he's telling me about this sort of role of death and rebirth, and about karma and all these different things. And I'm learning more and more from this guy who's essentially a street thief, but he's taking me to all these different gurus to experience these different ceremonies. He takes me down into this one ceremonial temple, and there's a guy, this super old ancient guru who's been doing this for his whole life. and he's bouncing around on one leg, beating this drum the whole time, worshiping the god of death and rebirth, and and the sound of Om. And I go and I like halfway through this, I'm like, why is that guy just standing on one leg, only on his left leg? And I will go and I ask him afterwards through Baba Lutlo, and he says that's his pathway to meditation. That's how he enters his state of neuroplasticity, by choosing to stand only on his left leg, which happens to be my only remaining biological leg. So I'm like,
wild.
Yeah, this guy just. But what I realized in that whole journey was that it's not like if you think about your life, you have many different chapters of your life, and each chapter is like an entire life. And then it dies, and if you're able to let go of that chapter, you can accept the new chapter. You can truly transition into something new. So each one of those chapters makes up the whole of your life, but actually you go through many death and rebirth cycles in a single lifetime. And this guy, Baba Lutlo, it's like he's one version of himself, and maybe he'll be something else later and all these other things. But my understanding from that experience is that, in fact, it's not about being one way. It's about experiencing the breadth of the human journey, the breadth of the human condition, and going through all those death and rebirth cycles that allow you to sort of see the whole of what it means to be yourself. And, whether you're starting off as the guru or you're starting off as the thief, or the order, doesn't really matter. But it's about choosing to allow yourself to let go of something that allows you to be born into something new.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So you were able to get rid of the pain, the phantom pain. But it sounds like you're talking about something way bigger just than letting go of pain.
Oh, yeah. Look, I think that I'm talking about letting yourself go and not hold on to the expectations of permanence, right? Like, it's like if anybody who's gone through a major life change, like you or me or all of us, everybody's done that at some point. You find this moment where you're sort of mourning the loss of who you were before. And that's okay. That's totally okay. But you have to truly accept that and almost embrace and succumb to that loss and let go of holding on to the resistance of trying to keep who you were before to be able to accept the new. And that has to do with this, that so much has to do with the ceremonies that I experienced in Varanasi, because these people were like, okay, we're letting go of somebody. We're literally letting go of our loved one. And so we're burning their bodies at the banks of the river to let them become something else and to let ourselves become something else. And so what I guess I'm talking about was I was maybe a year after I lost my leg when I went to Varanasi, and I was truly grappling with, I think, trying to understand what transformation meant, what impermanence really was, and the different chapters of who we become through time.
And is it so you're talking about what happened to you, to me, to all of us, right? In terms of not trying to move into a new person. But is it also about letting go of things like, you live long enough and we all have like I was such a jerk when I was a kid. I wasn't the best version of myself. I might have hurt people in my life. So that builds up a lot of shame and guilt and sort of, I don't know, trauma that kind of holds you from becoming at peace. Do you think it also applies to people who have had that kind of PTSD type experience?
I think it totally does. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of the self is a big part of letting go and transitioning into a new life, right? Within your own life. And I think that it's like so important. I was just told by a friend, a very close friend of mine, of this story where they went went to this sort of ceremony in the jungles, and they were there with a group of other friends, and one was a mother and her daughter who had experienced a bunch of trauma together in their family, inflicted upon by their, basically by an abusive father.
Right.
And in this moment, like they were able to release themselves and not only forgive him, but forgive themselves to each other of having, sort of held that space for that trauma. Right? And then move through it in this way that was allowing them to become something new. But it had to do with, they literally had to get to a place where they can lose themselves and literally go out of their own bodies to be able to let go of the rigidity of They're narratives that we've created in our
Right.
heads.
Which are so locked. I mean, they feel so much like reality.
So, well, they are reality. So, but you have many realities. So they're one reality, and there's an infinite filing cabinet of different realities. And that's what I'm saying is that, like, I have very real pain.
Right.
Pain that was totally debilitating. I couldn't live life with that amount of pain. And so I had to find a way, and I found a way, but I'm lucky that I found a way. But it was about believing, and literally just in the mind, believing that the pain wasn't there. And then I was able to write this new story that is now also very real. Both stories were real. The only thing that shifted was a perspective, right? Like, both stories were totally real, but I was able to see something that I didn't see before and then believe it. And I think, have you heard of, like, there's a form of meditation that's pretty, silent meditation that people do for 7 days.
Yeah, I've thought I might go crazy if I tried one of those.
Yeah. I've had I haven't done it, but a couple of friends have done this. And they talk about, like, somewhere between day, and this is a meditation where you're completely silent. You're not making eye contact with anybody. You're not allowed to read anything. No information's coming in. You're completely inside yourself. There's no information coming in. And they describe going into memories that they've long forgotten, and going through the banks of these deeper memories that have sort of been hidden behind different levels of. And then they talk about this sort of shift somewhere in day 3 or 4, where they go from extreme happiness to extreme sadness, and extreme happiness to extreme sadness. And they go from, like, total euphoria to complete depression. And then they go back to euphoria. And to me, that was like, hey, literally nothing has externally changed. There's not been any input from the outside, and yet their feelings and their relationship to reality has been something that has gone through these radical shifts. And I think we all kind of instinctually know that our state of being comes from within.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of, like, I guess, observing it like a scientist that allows us to try to actuate that within ourselves, right? If you can observe that and see it, and then sort of detach yourself in a way that allows you to say, hey, maybe I can try this, then you can pick a different filing cabinet, right?
Now, you went through that experience, and then you go back into the real world. And it's not like you go, like, live the rest of your life in a cave, right? You go back into the real world. You're a personality. You're on TV. You have this successful show, National Geographic Adventure, speaking in front of groups all the time. So how did that change you in terms of moving back into the world? Because you got to bring it. You got to bring this big personality to the table. But if you felt your ego kind of die and come, how do you wrestle with that?
We all have ego, and I think of ego in the term not of, like, oh, I'm, like, egotistical,
right,
or whatever.
Exactly.
It's more like my default mode, how I see the world and how I perceive my role in the world, is my ego, right? And once one version of it is dead and I've let go of it, I'm entering into a new one. So, like, from my childhood into my early adulthood, or when I was married and then I had a divorce, like, the different versions of me at these different places were very real, different versions of myself, driven by my perception of myself to the world. And now, I've gone through this journey where I've experienced that in a very physical way. And I think when I was, like, right off the bat, I was super lucky that I was surrounded by incredible friends. And also, like, I got to give a lot of credit out to Nat Geo, because they didn't balk at the idea of me testing my own limits on their dime. Mm-hmm. But they said, okay, it was like 6 months after my accident, and they said I had already been building this project where we were trying to use, a lot of technologies in the jungles of Guatemala to try to find these Mayan ruins that were hidden within the jungles. And so my friend had just commissioned this huge collection of LiDAR data, which is laser mapping through the trees, and then you can digitally delete the trees. So Amazing. Naturally, there was a moment when the first expeditions were about to be launched to try to ground truth what we thought were all these hidden lost cities out in the jungles. And Nat Geo was like, okay, well, they didn't even ask. They just said, like, in terms of, like, how do you feel? They're just like, do you want to go, right? And of course I wanted to go.
Of course.
Right? So I get helicoptered in to my friend's archaeological site, and we pull out some machetes, and my new thing was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to walk, 20, 30 miles through the jungle with my prosthetic leg. I'd never done it before. So I brought little walking sticks.
And by the way, FYI, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, because we work with a lot of amputees. And when it gets hot like that and the temperature changes, it gets all hot and steamy, your stump like changes shape and it shrinks or expands. And man, it is a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, there's a lot of problem solving, I would say. But I'm an engineer, so it's about like MacGyvering it, right? And it works. And so, and then the other thing that I've also been able to figure out is that pain is not real. So it's in my journey with my leg, my relationship with physical pain has become something much more fluid. Like you don't actually remember the feeling of pain. You remember the concept of it, but you don't remember the feeling. So now when I feel pain, I'm like, like I just doesn't even hurt anymore, because I don't really care anymore. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't have space. So
you're trekking through the jungle.
Yeah, so let's go. And the next thing you know, I'm out there in the jungle looking for these pyramids, and we ended up finding pyramids that had never been seen before since the time of the Maya.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
And then we started doing more and more of these expeditions, as I've been doing before, and I started to feel this responsibility a little bit to continue to, I guess, represent a different narrative, because I'm on TV. There's 167 countries that get National Geographic, and I remember initially the moments after I lost my leg, and coming home and looking in the mirror and not knowing how to feel about myself, right? Like to feel like, do I still, like, what am I? What I remember like not knowing if I felt sexy or if I felt not, and like all these different things, right?
Right.
And so like, who am I, right? And so now that doubt, that scary doubt in the beginning, I think is largely informed by societal narratives that have been perpetuated, and specifically around disabilities as being something of, that like holds you back from being able to be some version of a complete self.
Yes.
Which is, as you know, Eric, so untrue, right? And so, now that I'm like running around the jungles and climbing mountains and scuba diving, I don't make my prosthetic the centerpiece of this, but, maybe like on Act 2, all of a sudden I'll start wearing shorts and everybody will be like, whoa, but I won't even really bring it up, because it's sort of like, hey, it's a part of me. It doesn't define me. It's a great part of me. But what really is inside me is just my curiosity. That's what defines me, my curiosity. And I think that the thing that's been very gratifying is hearing from other people that might be sitting in a hospital bed or might be facing a moment where they just become an amputee or something else even, and saying that, that it's been rewarding them to see another story, another way in which one could be, that they could embody themselves. And so I'm so grateful that Nat Geo's given me that opportunity, because honestly, the same thing happened for me when I was lying in that hospital bed and somebody showed me the picture of a guy surfing. It changed my life. And so I hope I can do that and pay that energy forward.
Do you ever find it really interesting, this wild connection between the external and the internal of your life? I mean, so you're like finding hidden sacred places in the jungle, using technology to kind of cut through all the external stuff and get to the heart of these things. And then you're kind of doing that internally, or your life forced you to do that internally. It's a kind of a beautiful thing. It's like a thematic journey that seems where the two sides sort of fit somehow.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. I've always felt like I've lived this. Yeah, I did wonder sometimes, like, am I coherent, or are these like completely different narratives that have taken over my life? But yeah, actually, to be honest with you, I think it's all been driven by a quest to just know more intimately what it means to be a human, and not just. I think now it's definitely gotten into this place where it's like, what is the mind, and where do we come up with the realities that then become the things that we see around us, and that we see in ourselves. So I've really been super lucky, and I don't even know how to describe it, but to be able to go to all these places and see all these different versions of our own story in human history.
What does it mean to be a human then? Because like we're insanely destructive, we're insanely creative. There's so many facets to us as human beings.
And that's so true. I think that this process, in one part, goes back to that first trip to Mongolia when I met those shamans showed up on the side of this mountain, this sacred mountain, and I didn't know they were going to be there. It took us 2 days by horse and truck to get there, and then all of a sudden these shaman are there, and they beat this drum into the trance, and then they started talking to me, and they're like they want to judge why we were there, and the shaman says, basically after a whole like 2 days of sitting with me, that the most important part, and I tried to tell them all about the technology we were using to be non-invasive and all those other things, and nothing got through the translation. And eventually what he said was, it's just about your intentions. Like, what are your intentions? The reason why I bring that up is that I think what I've learned is that we have one superpower, and that superpower is our imagination. Our imagination creates reality. Everything that I look around at, both physical and non-physical, was first imagined in the mind and then turned into reality. From a chair to your relationships, it's really like that's an incredible power. That's the power of being God. But it's the intentions that determine our fate, right? So it's if you know you have that power, if you can realize that power within you, then the real question is, what are your intentions? And I think that's very personal to anybody. I mean, that's different for everyone. But that's what makes the world the way it is. It's not our imagination, it's our intentions.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
When I think about that, I think about just the journey that you've had, and this incredible journey, not just around the world, but also inside the mind. And I think about so many of our listeners and people in our No Barriers community that are right in the midst of their struggle. You have had all these life experiences and all this ability to sort of synthesize it together. But for someone like right in the midst of their struggle, is there any word of guidance or guiding thought that you might offer up to that person who's really in that middle of their own hell on earth, trying to get to the next step out?
And probably feel a bit powerless too, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess my relationship to those moments have been strange in that I've always found them sort of romantic. You don't get those moments without the pain, the truly transformative moments. So if you're paying the dues of suffering, then you're about to reach something that, very few get to reach, which is an insight, if you're open to it, that you're paying for with the suffering. And that insight might be one of the most important things that you'll have in your life. So it's almost like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like when I've been, for example, in love loss,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it hurts.
Yeah.
But it's almost slightly like you're like, I know something is changing within me. I'm sort of excited about what's happening in me. I want to, I want to write down what I'm feeling. So my advice would be to almost face it like an artist would face the moment of despair, to create the creativity in you that allows you to realize something in you that you're paying for anyway. So you might as well realize it, right? You're paying for it with the pain. So you might as well see the fruit of that pain.
And then, Albert, ride it like a barrel wave.
And that's the second part. The last part of advice is Mike, who gave me the image of himself riding a barrel wave. I had a talk with him, and he said that he was seeing himself inside this barrel wave. He was taking all these selfies with a stick while riding in a barrel, which is ridiculous already. And he realized that his face was contorted in fear. He was like,
Yeah.
Which if you've ever surfed and taken a picture of yourself, it's pretty common to just be like terrified at the moment of being like that.
Yeah, people describe my kayak face, and it's like this, like, I don't want to do this for the whole world. I'm just doing it for you two. It's an open mouth O.
Yeah. Yeah. He said that he made a conscious effort smile for the photo. And he said, as cheesy as it sounds, the minute he started smiling for his own photos, in his mind, like he was choosing to, he literally forced himself to choose to smile. And I don't know that I'm not trying to be like toxically positive, but that choice of smiling, he said, allowed him to find the flow state within the wave in a way that he didn't realize was there. So, my advice is basically, find the romance in the pain that allows you to realize the thing, the insight that might show you that is a lot of times the most powerful thing that you will have in your life. And then the second thing is that try to remind yourself to smile, and maybe you'll find the flow.
Albert, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Our slogan at No Barriers is what's within you is stronger than what's in your way.
Hey, it's just true.
There you go.
I love it.
You guys nailed it.
Thank you, Albert.
So good talking.
Cool, man. All right. We got to go do some fun adventure together.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, man. Have a great day. No barriers, everyone.
The production team behind this podcast includes producer Diedrich Jonk, that's me, sound design, editing, and mixing by Tyler Kottman, marketing and graphics support from Stone Lord, and web support by Jamlo. Special thanks to the Dan Ryan Band for our intro song, Guidance. And thanks to all of you for listening. We know that you've got a lot of choices about how you can spend your time, and we appreciate you spending it with us. If you enjoy this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe to it, share it, and give us a review. Show notes can be found at nobarrierspodcast.com. That's nobarrierspodcast.com. There's also a link to shoot me an email with any suggestions for this show, or any ideas you've got at all. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
See the rain, it catches on.